The Kansas City Chiefs have dominated the AFC West division for 7 straight years. They've taken home the division crown, but could that end this season? The Chargers have a new head coach in Jim Harbaugh that has shown the ability in the past that he's not one of those coaches that he needs 2 to 3 years to be able to put together a contender. He's good enough that he can build a contender right away, immediately. And for a very long time, this division hasn't had good coaches. Well, Jim Harbaugh is a good enough coach where you look at him inheriting Justin Herbert. And the Chargers are going to have a really good offensive line this year. And their defense can be really good too. They have a good enough squad where they could take the league by surprise and win the AFC West this year. The AFC West is not that good. There are only 2 teams in this division that are good enough to even be playoff caliber, and that's Kansas City and the Chargers themselves. Kansas City is not as good as what people think they are, even though they walk into this season having the opportunity to submit themselves as a dynasty and three-peat. Their offensive line still isn't good. Hell, the Chargers' offensive line is way better than what Kansas City's is going into this year. Their defense is always really good because of Steve Spagnuolo, but the Chargers have a really good defensive coordinator going into this year and Jesse Minter. And the defense that we've seen from LA in the last couple of years that's been an abomination, you're no longer going to see this year with how well coached Jesse Minter is going to have that unit. There are going to be a lot of issues that caused the Chargers to underachieve in years prior that you're no longer going to see because of coaching. You're not going to see blown coverages, missed assignments. You're going to see a team that's going to be ready to play. They're going to be well prepared, and they're also going to be physical and tough in the trenches. The knock on Los Angeles being able to be a playoff team or maybe not be able to push for the AFC West crown is due to the lack of talent that they have on paper. But one thing about Jim Harbaugh is that, as he has shown this past season at Michigan, you don't need to have a talented team to win as long as you have him as your head coach, because he's going to instill an identity in you that's going to equate to you being a championship team. That's toughness, being physical up front, and being able to go a full fourth quarter or a full 4 quarters of football. The Chargers are going to be able to handle themselves up front against Kansas City this year, and that possibly could be what gives them the advantage. They're also going to have a really good rushing attack, and their receiving core is going to be decent enough to win as long as they can keep Justin Herbert upright. You don't need elite wide receivers to be able to win. When did Jim Harbaugh ever had the elite number 1 when he was coaching for the 49ers? Never. His best options were Vernon Davis and Michael Crabtree. None of those dudes were all that great. The same thing with the Chargers this season. It's the same problem that, people kind of have given the benefit of a doubt to Kansas City because they've been able to win despite not having great talent, but because they have a good coaching staff. You got a great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, and you got a good head coach in Andy Reid. The Chargers kind of have that similar situation. Jim Harbaugh isn't as good as Andy Reid, but he's not too far away from him. He's a top 5, top 7 coach right now based off what he did his first few seasons with the San Francisco 49ers. The Chargers also have an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert. He's not as good as Patrick Mahomes, but he's a top 7 QB in the league. They got a good offensive line. They're going to have a good defense, and they're going to be able to use that smash mouth mentality to bulldoze their way and to bully ball themselves to an AFC West championship this year potentially, capturing this division. We know that it goes through Kansas City, and they have the kind of team that can beat Kansas City this year inside this division. Kansas City has a good chance to three-peat this year, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as what we may think. The Chargers are a way different team than what we've seen in years past, all because of who they've hired to be their head coach. This is probably the best head coach the Chargers have ever had in the history of their franchise. I believe the Chargers have a great chance to win this division this year, and I can't see them winning anything less than 9 games. At best, this is an 11, potentially 12-win team. There are certain things that you may look at on paper when it comes to evaluating how good a team is that you won't see on paper until the games are played because of the impact of coaching. Coaching is something that many of you guys do not take into account when it comes to predicting how good a team is going to be. You judge a team based on how you infer their roster to produce this year, and maybe who their quarterback is, or depending on how big name the head coach is, right? But when you look at the Chargers, their head coach has won in the National Football League at a very high level right away. And he has also shown the ability to elevate teams that may not be the most talented, but they play to the mentality that he implements, being physical and punishing you up front. And this year, I think that the Chargers have the squad to be able to stop Kansas City from dominating the AFC West still.